Karin will introduce us, and you'll be ready to go.
All righty, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this bittersweet edition of our Sustainability Research and Practice Seminar. It's only bittersweet because it is the last presentation in the Spring 2025 series. And as I was mentioning to Callie earlier today, this hour of the week is one of my favorite hours of the week because we just have an opportunity to learn so much about so many different ways in which sustainability has become part of Westchester University's academics and its operations. My name is Brad Flam. I'm the director of the Office of Sustainability, and our office has been honored to co-sponsor this series with the Office for Research and Sponsored Programs and the Sustainability Council Scholarly and Creative Activities Committee. As I said, this is a series. We will be on pause through the summer, but look for the series to recommence in the fall of 2025. But in the meantime, please join me in welcoming Dr. Karin Volkwein-Caplan to this, the final.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I have been at Westchester University before some of you have been born. I was hired in 1992, so I've been here probably one of the longest faculty members around. And my teachings and also my research has changed over the years. And when I started out, I did all this research with women's studies and sexual harassment and AIDS, and it was very critical research, but it was in the 90s and there was a lot of backlash. And it was really very difficult because I was always on the defense, why that is important and always smart, you know, and especially I come from the sport and athletic backgrounds. So no, we don't do that here, you know, and now we know that it's actually worse there than in academics, which my first book was about. Anyway, so then I started working with Dr. Jasmine McConaughey, and she is from the psychology department. She recently retired. And we then started working on something more fun. So that was the aging process before we got old. So it was all fun before we had to address this in a way, feeling it in our own bodies, what's happening. But I think it's all coming together, then connecting it with sustainability, because all of a sudden, whatever is healthier for you as an individual and trying to keep yourself physically active and physically fit helps the planet the most, because then you would not be so concerned to park right in front of everything. You wouldn't be so concerned of having an elevator or not. You would be happy that there are stairs, and you would be happy that you can walk a little bit. And nowadays, research has actually shown that you can benefit the most from doing a little spurts of exercise here and there throughout the hour of every of the day. So you don't have to have 30 minutes, a whole hour, and a lot of people say they don't have time. And you know, now we have the desk that you can stand, you can sit, and things like that. But I like to focus in my seminar today, in my lecture, on the healthy aging in a sustainable way and what we see in the world. And of course, also how it then affects us individually. And years ago, I changed my class that I teach in a gen ed program, sport. It was called sports. No, what was it called? KN 246. It's called now Sport, Wellness, and Society, because I'm focusing more of on the sustainability aspect and also on the individual. And then I worked on this book with Dr. McConaughey, and there are wonderful examples that we research throughout the world with interviews. How do people live and what do they do? And these are all people in their 70s and 80s, and they're still in very good condition. So let's just get started. And is this moving forward? Not moving forward? Already? Okay.
Let's see if I can. There you go.
All right. So I would like to start with a quote from the famous Indian Nobel laureate in literature, Rabindranath Tagore. If you cry because the sun has gone out of your life, your tears will prevent you from seeing the stars. I thought that was very fitting because as you age, you know, you have this ache and this pain and you have to do this and it's not as easy as living when you were a student. But there's still so much we can do and we can contribute and we can help other human beings. So it's not just all sad, it's also a new phase in life and it can be very positive. So I want to address that the health and well-being of the planet directly relates to the well-being of each of us. And want to also show you that if you exercise regularly, people have shown that they are happier and healthier. And happier people on the average live 8 years longer than people that are negative and miserable. So think about that. If you want to live longer, you better look at the positive aspects of life. All right, so the questions I like to address are, what are the obstacles in our healthy aging process? You know, how can we then, of course, remove those obstacles? And how can living a healthy and a healthier life improve also the health of the planet? And how can opportunities for physical activity and exercise be increased for all of us? So we have seen not everybody has the same access to opportunities to be physically active. For example, if you live near a park, it's so much easier than living in an inner city or next to a big highway. We don't have the same access to nutritious food. We live right, maybe in the countryside, and we even have a little garden, we can get it from the outside. But if you live in a not as desirable neighborhood, you might have to walk for miles to even get to a healthy place where you can get decent food. Okay, so in recent years, we have all lived through the pandemic, and that also had a major impact on the aging process, in regards that it made it become more aware of what we have to do to keep ourselves and the planet healthy. Because as we know, the people that were not as healthy, even the younger ones, they were the ones affecting first, dying first, you know, suffering from most of the illnesses. So the people that had a stronger immune system by being more physically active also had a better chance to survive the pandemic. So, of course, aging is inevitable, but what can we do and how can we live our lives? So we have seen, or the pandemic made it very clear that a lot of people did the opposite of what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to stay home, but then they did stay in their house and did not become physically active. I, on the other hand, can't sit still. So I took walks wherever. I discovered my neighborhood. I mean, I would walk for miles every day. I'd never seen such beautiful neighborhood. I didn't even know where I was living. So that was a benefit. But since a lot of people showed a decrease in physical activity, we also, on the other hand, saw a rise in obesity. So that is one of the major health concerns, and also if you suffer from obesity, malnutrition, you of course have a greater likelihood not to live long at all. So it decreases your life tremendously. And also, sadly, we have seen an increase in the mental health issues. And if you don't feel good and you know it yourself, then you don't want to get out of bed. If you don't feel good, you're not encouraged to walk down and maybe say hello to your neighbors. When you feel great, you know, you love to walk on campus and say hello to everybody, and that charges you and that makes you feel even better. So the mental health issue has to also be addressed if we want to get people to be more physically active, which is healthier for them and healthier for our environment. So then I have a quote here by Mahatma Gandhi: the future depends on what we do in the present. And it's actually important to learn all these things when we're young, So the sooner you start with a healthier lifestyle and a more positive outlook on life, the better. A lot of people think, oh, I can just, I'll start that later. But then later in life, you become very busy and it gets very complicated and more difficult to make extra time. So it would be better. What little steps can you do to just make your life happier and healthier, and therefore also, suffer less from mental health issues? Because research has shown that if you are physically active, you can actually also be mentally healthier. And research has shown that if you take antidepressants, throw them away when you start a physical activity program. If you become more physically active, you don't need most of these antidepressants. But our medical system is set up that we get always a prescription. Oh, take this pill, take that pill, that helps you. But there's so much research that shows if you're physically active, you're much healthier all around, and you don't need half of the pills that people are consuming. And also, if you're more physically active, you have fewer mental health problems. All right. So the life expectancy in the world, of course, has increased in recent years tremendously. And the most industrialized nations are the ones that have produced the longer lives. But do you know which country has the people that become the oldest? In what country in the world do people become the oldest? What would be your guess? Yes, Japan, yes, that's number one. The average life expectancy is 89.5. And what do you think, looking at this graph, see Oceania is on the top, then comes Europe, and America is kind of in the middle. So you think we're one of the most industrialized nations, one of the most, the first world, most developed. Well, we are number 19 when it comes to who lives the longest. So all the other countries, 18 other countries are ahead of us. And what do you think the life expectancy is now? It has decreased a little bit because of the pandemic. But what do you think in the United States the average life expectancy is? And of course, male and female, what do you think is higher? Women live longer or men live longer?
Well, I know women live longer.
Yes, they do, and that's still the case. So what do you think the average life expectancy is now?
I'm gonna go like 73.
Yeah, actually between 74 and 78,
I was
so.
gonna go 75.
So that is a tremendous decrease if you think about it, my husband is currently in a not such good shape, and he's turning 81, and people are saying, oh, 81 is not old. But who is saying that? The people in the nursing home that are also 80, 85, 90, 92, there's some that are 100. So my husband in that facility is pretty young, but he has already outlived the life expectancy in the United States. And that's what I always try to tell them, because some of these people, they have to have a positive outlook on life to continue going with their health issues. But a lot of them think that they haven't lived long enough. And it's amazing. What's also amazing is if you get more care, you also live longer. If you have more money, if you have more access, if you have greater support from your community, if you have a family and you're not lonely, all of these, the place and the space where you live when you're older makes a major difference in your life expectancy. So then, who's the worst off, at least in the world, with life expectancy is Africa. And why do you think Africa is at the bottom? After what these few things that I have already mentioned, what makes a major difference? That is not the most developed world, right? So people on the average are much poorer. They have less access to healthcare. What else could we say?
Communicable diseases,
Yes,
malaria.
communicable diseases. I mean, the United States has always funded major immunization in Africa, but that's not necessarily the case anymore either. And AIDS is actually getting much better, but it's still more pronounced there. So it makes a major difference where you live and how you live. Okay, so we could say, what is the expectancy, you know, as I might not be around in 2050, but you might, some of the younger ones here. But in 2050, 1/3 of the world's population is gonna be over 60. I consider that still young, but in your case, you know, the student age is, you consider that old. But that also means when you're in your 60s, you know, a lot of people have finished raising their children, they have finished maybe their jobs or their careers, and then it's the next phase in life. So they still want to enjoy the later part of their lives, and who supports that financially when they're not working any? They better have some savings, right? So you better save up for old age. A lot of people that have wonderful savings, again, they're much better off than the people that don't. And also, you know, if you don't have health insurance, that's also one of the reasons the United States is in the middle. Not everybody has health insurance in this country, but in Europe and in Japan, you know, it's covered basically through the way the government policies are. All right, so we have now established that aging experience in the world is definitely not equal. There are many variations. And I already addressed that we are number 19, and we also said that women live on an average 6 years longer. So ethnicity, gender, social class are major variations in the overall health and well-being that we are experiencing. So where do the people in the world live the longest? You probably have heard about the blue zones, right? Everybody has. And here's a big question. This Professor Büchner, who started this research in the 80s, he was an American who lived in California. He started that in the 80s, and he listed the longevity hotspots. And now we're almost 45, 50 years later. Do you think the hotspots are the same? Do you think that list that you see here was the same when he started his research in the 70s? In the 70s, there were a lot of places listed under the blue zones in India, in the Himalayas. And the question is, why is it not there anymore? What do you think has changed? India has developed tremendously. So when we have developing countries, or for example, in China too, you know, when it started to develop, if you would fly into the major city in China, Beijing, and it was daylight, how come you didn't see anything? Pollution, pollution, pollution. And that's happened there too. So then all these wonderful places that used to be, you know, just a little village in the Himalayas where people were completely living independent of you know, being polluted, for example. They lived on the land, and they also had very little access to the modern world. But as they became more modernized and more developed, they were looking to the West. How can we learn from the West? Oh, we want that too. The materials, we don't want to sit on our floor anymore. We don't want to sleep on our floor anymore. We rather have a chair. We want a bed. We want, you know, they see that with technology, they got more information. So as they were turning more towards the West, they lost what they had. And we, the Western world that is so established, what do we do now for healthy living and for healthy mindset? We're turning to the East. And what are we learning from the East, and what are we looking for when we turn to the East? Mindfulness, meditation, yoga, Pilates, all of that is celebration of the Eastern philosophy. But the Eastern philosophy was also tied to indigenous religion. So now, you cannot just, we don't just offer yoga. We just say, it does this and that, and if you want to participate, you have to pay $10 or $15 a yoga session, and things like becomes very, it even becomes expensive. You have to have money if you want to participate in a yoga class. And if you know how to do it, in India, you grow up with that. It's like learning how to eat, how to put a fork to your mouth or whatever, however you eat, or how to walk. So you learn how to do these movements growing up, and it doesn't cost anything. And that's the sad part in the industrialized world. Even fitness activities, people think they don't have time for fitness, they cannot engage in fitness activities because they don't have the money to go to the fitness studio. You don't have to go, because the latest movement is not running to the fitness studio and participating in aerobics and weightlifting. That was in the 70s and 80s. The latest thing is functional fitness. And have you heard that term, functional fitness? What do you think if you just look at the words? What do you think functional fitness means? That means you become fit by doing something functional, such as what would be functional if you lived in your house or in your apartment? And you engage in that and you get really hot because you produce some energy. Clean your house. Wash your car by hand instead of driving through the car wash. Scrub the floor. Gardening. In the old days, people would wash their clothes by hand. All of that, think about it. Think about how much energy you produce and use if you would do all these things by yourself. I live in the suburbs. You never see anybody outside. Everything gets done by the laborers, right? When they come in and you look at them, do you find somebody obese there? Not necessarily, because they're very physically active. They work all day in the garden, scrubbing, window cleaner, and you name it. But if you are inactive, it is not just how you are born, it's also what you eat, and a problem with being physically inactive. Not just what you eat. Okay, so therefore different cultures have different path to longevity, and that's based on their lifestyle. So the more affluent you become, usually the less physically active you become in terms of functional fitness. But all these longevity hotspots that you see here, Sardinia, Okinawa, Nicoya in Costa Rica, Ikaria Island in Greece, Loma Linda in California, if you see how the people live there, they're not living most comfortable. They live much closer to the land and being much more an integral part of it, and also taking much better care of it. So I think the more we remove ourselves from the land and from the nature and hide in our homes and think it's so comfortable, and the technology and what we have to do outside, the less we actually feel connected to the land, the less we take care of it. And the same thing is, when I walk around the neighborhood, I always pick up all the trash. And it is amazing how much trash is there. But if you are just driving your car, you cannot pick up the trash, but if you walk it, and the worst is, take your car to the gym, then you go in the gym and you're on the treadmill for an hour and then get back in the car and drive home. Why not walk to the gym, and when you get there, just turn around because you don't need the treadmill anymore, and it doesn't cost anything. I just don't understand that. And the worst, what I see by walking all the time, is people sitting in the car. Doesn't matter, could be the perfect day, and the car is running. For hours, they sit there for hours. That's when they take their breaks, including, I see them also, the Westchester University trucks, parked in various areas. People take their breaks, they check out everything on the phone, they eat their lunch in the car. Why don't they go outside and walk around a little bit and be on the phone and do that? You can take your breaks being a little more active rather than just sitting. So it is almost a disease, all this sitting, when you don't have to. I mean, we have to do a certain amount, but, so it's definitely lifestyle, and it's not just how we were born or what our genetics are. It's definitely a combination. All right. So how do these people live in the blue zones? So a few things I've already mentioned, very healthy behavior. But you see this big Buddha here. Yes, calming down, being reflective, and come to maybe reflect what is most important. Do I really have to rush out to this other and have a full schedule, with all the things we constantly schedule? Maybe we have to reflect a little bit on our lifestyle and just focus a little more on our health and well-being rather than always being in the midst of everything. That is also something in the modern world. We think we have to participate in everything at all times in order to be in and to be accepted. All right, and then again, if you do the daily activities like grocery shopping or picking the salad or whatever you eat from the garden, you are much more physically active than going to the grocery store, loading it up, then loading it in the car. There are grocery stores, even in my neighborhood, if I don't have too much to buy, I just walk there and then I buy the food. And then when I come back, it's so heavy, the backpack, everything is so heavy. But you know what I've done? I've walked an hour and I lifted weights. And that is very good for your joints and for your muscle. So you don't even have to go do the regular weight training for each muscle group. If you just think about your life and what you do, how can you make some of what you do more physically active, more weight bearing? As you age, weight bearing activities are actually one of the most important to do, and a lot of people are not doing it now because then your bones, and your muscle will shrivel away. All right, so what's also very important is that you have to have a purpose in life. And who has a purpose in life? If you have a lot of money and you are old and you live in your mansion and you just tell the people, cut the grass, get me the groceries, give me this. These people are very lonely and miserable. It's kind of sad to say. But if you live in a smaller environment, closer together, and you go out and you walk to the grocery store, that's what they do in the blue zones. They walk down the road to the grocery store. While they get there, they meet Nina and John, and they talk about this and they talk about that. So when they come back, they already have beautiful conversations, their social life is fulfilled, and they are not lonely. Loneliness is also something that reduces lifespan tremendously. And the more money you have, unfortunately, also, sometimes as you get older, the lonelier you get. All right, so also in the Himalayan regions, what I mentioned earlier, the religious aspect or having faith was something very important because it centers you and it also makes you connected with something higher than yourself. So it's not just focusing on myself, me, but how, a higher, whether you call it God or higher force or some connection with, you realize you're not the only one. In fact, you matter as little as an ant in the world. Think about it. And then we think that we're so important. that makes you a little more humble. And it also makes you understand, maybe, well, I have a little something, okay? Because maybe, I slept bad or whatever. Then you talk to your neighbor and they have something else. And then you feel better. I'm not as bad off as that one. If you have a community and you can talk to each other and help each other and rely on each other, that is much better and much healthier. And that also then gives you a purpose in life. Because you reach out, you take care of the planet, it matters what your neighbor does and if you can help out or not. So when my husband got really ill a few years ago, I did not know how many beautiful neighbors I had that knocked at my door and left some food and helped me out. And that made a major difference. And now, 2 years later, I have actually developed, believe it or not, a new circle of friends. And you know who these friends are? The ones that are caring. Not the ones that just wanted to go out and drink something and have a fun time. They're actually not my friends anymore. My circle of friends has changed quite a bit to the people, that also have a meaning in life and they care about others. And that way, if you do that, that helps you too, because then you feel better about yourself too. So it's give and take. All right, so we already established when the West started to look east, east started to look west, and it is good to look at both and trying to keep a balance. It's not that one lifestyle is better in all regards than the other, but so we can see that we can learn from other countries and then other cultures. So that was also one of my books that I produced with people from all over the world. I'm part of the International Council of Sport and Physical Education and Activity. And they asked me to do this book. They knew I was doing research on healthy aging. So we wanted to see how do people live in different parts of the world. And I have 13 people from 13 different countries producing a piece there, but I forgot that book in my office today. I wanted to show that to you. But it was an interdisciplinary perspective, and that also brought a lot of the information, some of what I said internationally together. So what's most important? The physical, the social, and psychological factors. And that all, we are not only an entity by ourselves, but then you have to see our little entity, which doesn't stop here, with the rest of the world as well. So what's most important in later life? Try to avoid diseases. So how do you do that? Think about where you travel, how you travel. Now we know how to maybe not get sick as much. We know how to take care of ourselves a little better. Through the pandemic, we had to. And engage with life. So I already gave you lots of little details. It really doesn't matter. You don't have to always go to the greatest party. The greatest party could just be your neighbor or the student that is in the room next door, right? So maintain your cognitive and physical functioning. So that means don't stop learning, don't stop being interested in something, always read something. My mother was just always interested in crossword puzzles. It doesn't, just keep it going. Let's see, what else? Oh, physical functioning. So how much should you do? I said earlier, it's actually enough. Every hour, if you take in 1 hour, if you take 5 breaks of 5 seconds, but then you do something very intense, not just stand up, but maybe just take a quick walk from here to here and back. I mean, or jump, just jump up and down, or go quickly outside and go up and down the steps and then come back, not just a little bit stretch, okay? So if you do that, but let's say you don't do that, on the average, if you want to stay healthy and well, 3 times a week, 20 minutes, 3 times a week, 20 minutes is the minimum. And think about it, is that too much? 3 times a week, 20 minutes? You go for a walk in your neighborhood, you already have 30 minutes, you know? And then try to increase it a little bit. But start with that. If you think, oh, I don't have the time. And if you don't want that, do what I said earlier, just do it a little intense when you take these spurts, these breaks, do it more intense. All right. So, where you live and how you live makes a major difference. And that book showed that, of course, too. So what are the challenges that we are facing? You know, COVID was a major challenge, so that also the rise in obesity. What do you think? What percentage of people are obese in the United States? And sadly to say, the United States is the fattest nation on earth, meaning it has the highest rate of obesity. So what percentage do you think of people in this country are obese? 1/3. Another third is overweight. So how many people are of regular, normal weight? Think about it. Only 1/3, and it's getting less. Obesity is on the rise, especially with school-age children, with the young kids. And the sad thing is, as they are building, as they're growing up and their cells are building, if you're obese or you have problems with your weight when you're younger, you develop more fat cells. And then as you're getting older, you know, the cells that you develop, it's like a balloon, so they can become bigger and less big. But when you stop growing at like 20, you know, I'm not a biology major, I hope I'm not butchering this up too badly, but I'm trying to make it simple. You know, if you grow up and you develop more fat cells than somebody who grows up with a normal weight with few fat cells, you know, then you always have to, you want to make sure that they are maybe not as big, they keep them small, but you will struggle with that for your life. And what are we doing, still having soda machines in the classrooms in the schools? And it's still, even to this day, we have that. And what we feed them, so that's where we have to start. That's actually very critical to start at a young age. Okay, so then the other challenges for healthy aging is ageism. And do you know what ageism is? What? You don't have to give me the perfect definition, but what is ageism?
Discrimination against people from heritage.
Yes. And could you maybe think of an example how, you know,
Not giving somebody a job because they're over something.
yes, so that's definitely, and if you think about it, you're the employer, you want to get the maximum out of a person. Of course, you're better off when you hire a younger one than when you hire an older one, that's what you think, but the younger one, you know, could get pregnant, so then it's time out. Raising a family, they would also get sick, an older one with the experience, and maybe if he or she aged well, they know exactly what they're doing, they're more efficient, they're more focused. You know, it's all give and take, but ageism and discrimination, putting people in their place and not giving them a job, or we're saying, you know, you're obsolete, we don't need you anymore. Older people can contribute so much to society, and the saddest thing is that they can really influence the youngest generation the best. So in the old days and also in the blue zones, how do people live? 3 generations under one roof. That also keeps you healthy and it keeps you young. And it, you know, you can influence the older ones, the wiser ones can influence the younger generation. It's actually much healthier. And also, if you think about it, you know, if you have, I'm just painting the picture, beautiful, rosy. Let's say grandma cooks the meal, you know, dad and mom come home and the food is there and the kids come home it's less stress for everybody if you can get along. So there are different, you know, we think that what we have, when we have more space, when we have much more for ourselves. When we live, we think the quality of life is better if we have more, but it's not necessarily. And also for longevity, that's not necessarily a healthier way of living if you're by yourself. And then the increase in mental health issues, why was it so bad with COVID? What was the major problem? Why did we have such an increase in the rise of mental health?
People were really isolated.
Yes, loneliness, so that we already connected that with healthy aging too. Loneliness is a big problem. And then when people get older, in the old days, if you have people that have been physically active all their lives with functional fitness, let's say somebody who works on a construction site, when they retire, their feedback usually is, oh, I deserve to sit down. I don't want to work. I don't want to move anymore. I did that. I'm done with that. But that's, you see people retiring and boom, often when they retire, they pass away. Why is that? Well, maybe they didn't continue. Maybe they didn't have a purpose in life. Maybe they also, they didn't continue being as physically active. They think they can just sit and it would be better. But that is it's usually better, even if you have pain, it's still better to work out through the pain, depending what it is, than become sedentary. So I have pain, I can't do it. Then you have a problem with obesity. You cannot get another body. So you have to try to manage that, balance that somehow. So, we have not so much time left, but okay, I'll finish this quickly. So obesity, if you look at the world, you see that the dark blue is the fattest nation on the world, and that is in the United States. And the other countries, they are also getting worse. And Africa, you see they're actually, in terms of obesity, there are hardly any there. And what's the other yellow one? Is that, but even the blue, when it's already blue, that means it's over 20%. Dark blue is over 40%. Or, 30, 35. So let's go to the next slide. So again, what I said, it's not just genetics, it's not just metabolism, it's also your culture, poor nutritional choices, eating too much, and just not being as physically active. Ageism, it's actually also a fear of older people, meaning young people, you don't want to be around older people. They don't want to be around older people. They're afraid of them, or they also fear of, there's also the fear of getting older. So you don't want to be around them, because in our society, we isolate them. The old people live in old people's homes, the young people live at the university, and, middle age. So we decompartmentalize the whole society. But in the blue zones, they all live together, and then they see how they can benefit from each other. And then it doesn't matter if the grandmother has more wrinkles and she's not as beautiful anymore, because what she can share with you, that beauty from the inside and her wisdom, is so much more than just what you see on the outside. But in this society, in the Western world, we focus so much just on the looks and the beauty, and that also is very shallow. And as you're aging, you have to embrace it, because if not, it's gonna catch up with you anyhow. All right. So this ageism is actually a much larger problem. It's not just not giving them jobs. It's also that we decompartmentalize. Everybody lives in different areas. And then we already discussed mental health. So let me just move on. Here you see who is most physically active, and that includes everybody, not just, participating in sport and fitness activity, but also functional fitness. Let's see, what do we see here? The orange one is who is not exercising enough in a normal week. And the blue one is the number of hours people exercise during the week. So who do we have on the top? Who exercises the most?
Netherlands, Germany,
Yes, Germany is very high. So
Romania, Russia.
Yes, and would
Is that
we
Russia?
have US there?
It does say, I think it does say Russia, I can barely see that.
Yes, yes, it's very difficult to see, sorry about that.
I know the first one is not. Yeah.
Yes,
Now it's confirmed.
we do no exercise in a normal week. Yeah, so you see here at the bottom, who do no exercise, they're actually the ones. They do very few people do no exercise in a given week. So 1/4 of the Japanese people say they do no exercise at all in a normal week. And here, we think everybody in Japan is well, healthy, but they actually don't eat as much and their portions are also much smaller. So it's all a combination of many facets, right? All right. So physical activity, 3 times a week, 20 to 30 minutes, moderate intensity, if you want to go with that schedule. It will help tremendously with how you feel psychologically, physically, and this is the interesting part. If you exercise more, if you move more, your perceived health increases. Doesn't necessarily mean that you are healthier, but you feel healthier. And because you think you're healthier, it's just the perception, then you're more positive. And if you're more positive, you're less likely to have a negative attitude. So again, it's a placebo effect. That's actually, and then we talked about the functional fitness activities. You also become, if you're more physically active, you become less concerned about aging. Because then you feel that your body can still do it. So the question is what then influences whether somebody will exercise or not? What do you think? What would help people to become more physically engaged?
And as part of the group, having a community of
Yes.
supportive people.
Having friends that participate, or your neighbors, or the family, you see? If the parents do physical activity, the kids see it too. But if the parents only drive their kids to the physical activity and watch them, they're not participating together. So if you participate together, all you do, it costs nothing, you can just go to the park and do it together. Walk together or do a little boating or ride a bicycle or something like that. So this book should just get up and do something, and it doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to cost anything. You make new friends, you feel better, you can put the pills aside, and I'm painting the picture very rosy. So yes, we have to get an action plan together. And so these are the 9 lessons that Brittner, who developed the blue zones, that we learned. Those people, they move naturally, functional fitness. They do everything, scrub their floors and things like that, even wash the laundry with them. Most of the food they eat is healthy because they don't have access to unhealthy food. It doesn't get sold there, or it's not growing there. They avoid processed food. Soda is actually some of the worst drinks in the world. And it's amazing how many people are drinking sodas and that we still have that around, even in schools. It's just a disgrace, my mother-in-law would say. All right, so limit meat, red wine in moderation. People have big debates about that too, but that is what Brittner in 2008 was still saying. Live a life that is less stressful, more yoga, more meditation, and put your loved ones first. Be more concerned about the ones that you live with that are closest to you, and then all the others come later. You can save the world, but just taking care of your loved ones. If everybody would do that, then it mushrooms too. All right, so what are our possible solutions? We can have these 4 goals. It would be good, if we have more global movements on focusing on the day-to-day health promotions. What are the little details one can do? That's why here on this campus, we have a garden, North Campus and South Campus. Now we have a beehive and these little things. We have a beautiful natural area where you can walk around and enjoy, relax, rejuvenate. It's all around. You don't have to, it doesn't cost anything. All the things it's they don't cost anything, right? And if you're a student, you can also have access to the fitness center. If you're a faculty, you have to pay. Well, I'm not using it. I don't walk around outside. All right. So, yeah, and live with the elders. And if the older population has a more positive quality of life, then the younger generation can benefit from it too. So try to include physical and social activities in your daily life instead of just always saying, let's go to dinner, let's go to lunch. Why not go for a walk and make that your own? You can pick up a coffee, but then walk around. On South Campus, the building is called Sturzberger Building, right? He was actually the professor that had my job. He called me his granddaughter because I have that line, there was somebody in between. I have his job, so to speak. And he always said, walk and talk. He never sat still, so you can have meetings, walk and talk. You don't have meetings always sitting. All right, so I want to finish with this quote. Let me not pray to be sheltered from danger, but to be fearless in facing them. Let me not beg for the stilling of my pain, but for the heart to conquer it. Thank you very much.
Karin, we
Sorry, I don't remember.
No, it's all right. We need to pause for a moment for anyone who does have to leave to get to a class at 1 o'clock. Could you stay for a few minutes for those of us who can't
Yes,
stay and
yes.
have questions?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll start just by reading a comment that Dr. Wanko left because she
Okay.
had to log off.
Mhm.
She was here for most of the time, but had to log off. And she said, I have to run, but thank you for this talk, Karin. I have a lot to say on this topic, but I just want to say how nice, whoops, I lost it. How nice it is to see another elderly woman presenting. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, and I'm not taking that as atheism. That is a support.
Yes.
Any questions or Katie, did you have anything to follow up on? I did want to, your talk reminded me very much of an article I read the other day that just surprised me. It's actually an article from 2012, published in Science Daily, but the title is less than 25% of Americans walk for more than 10 minutes continuously in a typical week. And I was just astounded by that statistic, because walking is a big part of my life. Like you, I find that it's stress relieving. It allows me to be physically active in the middle of the day where I'm sitting on my computer a lot of the time. And I like to have an opportunity to get out and move for half an hour or sometimes even an hour. So I was surprised to see that only 25% of Americans in a typical week will have at least one continuous 10-minute session of walking.
Yes, it's actually very sad. And that is the easiest physical activity to do. And it's also one of the most beneficial and that you can do way into old age. So if you don't have time for anything else, walking and lifting weights, you also need to, make sure that your bones and muscles stay strong. So those are the two things. And you don't have to go to the gym for that either, as I've already said, you wanna plant your tree and it's a lot of physical activity and hauling the dirt and if you think about functional fitness, a lot of people don't think that way. I have a cleaning lady. I do have a cleaning lady too, but I help her, so we do it together. And has become a friend of mine, and she said, and I told her about what she's doing is functional fitness, because she said, oh, I'm not doing enough exercise. I said, Magda, all the things you do is functional fitness. I explained it to her. Okay, she goes to the doctor for a general checkup, and she's like 40. And the doctor said, so do you do any physical activity? What do you do? And she says, I engage in functional fitness several hours every day. And do you know what the doctor said? What is that? They don't even teach, so that terminology is not, people don't know that. And in medical school, they do not teach very much how important physical activity is. In this country, they teach mostly, you have to know every detail and every word of any Latin muscle and you need to know all the terminology. But the importance of physical activity, and that could increase your health tremendously and decrease the pill taking tremendously. That does not get taught in the medical schools. It's so sad. But that is actually how you can increase people's health much more. And, to talk about my husband again, he was supposed to die 2 years ago and was put on hospice, and they took all the medications away from him, all. And he revived, and he's still alive, and it was amazing, because one medication has a negative side effect to the, they all have side effects too. People don't put that into, and everybody thought if they take that away, that would be it. But it just shows the body can actually, it's also made to help, and I'm not saying we don't need medicine, but we need to have a combination that is not just this artificial stuff. The body helps, can heal itself too in many ways, and that's why traditional medicine, Chinese, and we accept that in this country, but not as much as in some other countries where people live longer. Like in Europe, it's also a much bigger deal. The alternatives, but it is sad. It's sad how little people walk.
One opportunity our office has tried to promote over the years with not a lot of success, but is to make walking between South Campus and North Campus a more desirable thing by describing the health benefits of it, by describing the fact that there's actually lots of beautiful things to see with the trees and the birds and but even that distance of 3/4 of a mile is seen as a barrier. And everybody's busy, and so they think about the speed of taking the shuttle or getting
But
to and
taking
from.
the shuttle is not necessarily much faster.
Well-
Because you stand and wait for the shuttle.
Yeah. But I understand that it is hard because not everyone values walking, or you have a professor who's, you say, well, I'm late because I walked, and then say, I don't care, you can't be late.
Yeah.
So I think that's hard too, because we kind of need into that kind of like rushing to everything. It makes us think we don't have time to do these other activities. When we do, we just kind of have to shift the priorities a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think we're also so car-centric, it makes it hard to walk. Even just crossing the street around here. It's
Unsafe.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a part really close to where I live, but there's a major road that doesn't have a crosswalk. So it'd be like a 5-minute walk, but there's no way I would cross that street unless I was in a car. So it's a shame I have to drive 1 minute to the park, but unless they put in a traffic light, like there's just no way
Yeah.
I could do it. So that's definitely part of it, especially in this area for the students. I think it's
Yeah.
stressful.
Yes, yeah, so we need to, there has to be a culture shift and that has to start with young generation. And the parents also, if they are the role models and doing that with the children, that would be the easiest. But how do you get the parents to do that? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the worst I think is parents driving for hours to bring their kids to play as a game somewhere, you know, I mean, it's like for hours in the car, just so they can run around the soccer field there for an hour. I mean, you know what you can do in that whole day? But, you know, it's all about, you have to, this is, it has to be here in this country and culture, and that's why also you would never see me with a stopwatch or with a counting my steps or anything like that, you know, it's like, everything has to, I have to have this, and you know, everything has to be accounted for, and just do it for pleasure or for, you know, that is, it's.
Well,
It's a
thank you,
different
Karin.
mindset,
This
yeah.
this
Yeah,
this
thank you
was
so
a great end to a great semester.
Okay,
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Thank you, okay. I
I
appreciate that. Maybe next time I start, I'll do it again or I do a little different version.
Katie, I got it.